Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. My guest today is Deborah Morrison. She's the Chief Navigational Officer of Women Navigating Finances and the founder of the We Can Do It Women movement. Retired from over 4 decades as a CFP practitioner and asset manager, Deborah now leverages her rich wisdom as a financial and leadership coach to uplevel mature women's financial confidence and create intentional wealth to live the life of their dreams. She's also a certified grief coach and the best-selling author of My Husband Died, Now What? A Widow's Guide to Grief Recovery and Smart Financial Decisions and Common Sense Money Guide for Women. She's a TEDx speaker. She's been featured on outlets like CNN, ABC. I mean, this is just an honor to have her here. And she's also received so many awards that there are too many to list, but leading women entrepreneur, business owner of New Jersey, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, Deborah, hello and welcome to Back to Basics.
Thanks, Leticia. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, I'm very excited because your journey sounds fascinating, but with its challenges, obviously. And I would love to start at the origin story. Share with us, if you will, a little bit about, Deborah's a little girl. Where are you from? What did you envision you would become when you grew up?
That's a great question, Leticia. I was raised on a little 100-acre beef cattle farm, and it was pretty humble. And we worked real hard. And so no one had to teach me work ethic. And I was presented from my maternal grandfather shares of stock. And when he presented them to me, they were in paper, the paper certificates back in the day. And he presented them to me and his hands were shaking.
Oh.
And he presented all of us grandchildren 3 different companies and 3 shares of various stocks. And he said, don't sell these, Debbie, until you have to. Well, my grandfather wasn't an emotional man. And when his hands were trembling, I thought, well, that's not just paper there, right? And so I was very intrigued. He was a stock market investor during the Great Depression.
Oh, my goodness.
This was amazing. And then, again, raised on that farm, we didn't have much culture beyond farm life. And yet my aunt had a home in North New Jersey and frequented the theater and the opera and everything in New York and was quite cultured. And she brought us across the state of Pennsylvania, because I was on the Ohio border, into New York City and took us, Leticia, to the New York Stock Exchange. I was 8 years old.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Missionaries.
I leaned in. My nose was pressed to the plexiglass, and I leaned in, and all that shouting and fist pumping and the paper tickets up to the guys, cabs and so forth, and the flashing lights, and I had to be dragged away. I was just like, and I said to myself as I walked away, I'm going to be part of that energy. I didn't see any girls down there, right? So that wasn't an aspiration, but I had a sense that there was rich energy there. And ever since, I thought of money as energy, and it's really served me very well. So I went to college, okay, great, business degree, probably wanted to learn about investments. And they weren't putting money into an investment in a girl, 21-year-old girl, right? In 1978, it just wasn't happening. So they said, why don't you sell life insurance? They thought I'd be out the door like a week and a half. And I asked them to explain the intricacies and so forth of life insurance. And I thought, oh my God, I'd heard of it, but wow, this keeps families together. It keeps businesses together at the most inopportune times, the most horrific upcomings of death. And I led the agency, Leticia, in sales for the next 2 years as a 21 and 20-year-old girl.
Wow.
And then her office and said, okay, boys, I want to learn investments. And so I went up to the Series 7, skipped the Series 6, realized I needed initials because no one was going to take a girl seriously. I had one gray hair. I trained it right here to the middle. When my car broke down, I had to buy another car. I bought an anthracite BMW. It was almost jet black. I looked like 40 when I got out of it. I mean, I knew what I was up against. And
Wow.
I did the appropriate, my choices as to how to insert myself into a field that I was passionate about. I just as intrigued as all get out. And so I was selling life insurance, and I was asking people to see their tax returns when I was selling them life insurance. This was revolutionary. People were like, "No one ever asked me to see their tax." And I said, "Yeah, but I understand. I want to help you, and maybe
Mm.
reduce your taxes." And my interest in financial planning just expanded from there. Became a certified financial planner in half the time, because I did, and no one ever had done it before, less than 3 years. And I'm like, well, how about if you took one test in the morning and one test in the afternoon, because they were every 6 months. And then people were like, you don't double those things up. They're pretty hard courses. And I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? I could fail one of them and, parlay the combination of it. But I said to myself, I'm doing this. And I passed every one, boom, CFP. And so it was always a sense by which I would be the only woman in a double ballroom, at conferences. I mean, that's just how I rolled. And that's how it was in the day. And it has served me very well because women's intuition, Leticia, and I know that you are cognizant of this, women's intuition and our contextualized brain, right?
Mhm.
Our amygdala, I study the brain a lot. The woman's amygdala is very different than a male's amygdala. The neuron chit chat back and forth is like, well, we could do this, we could do that. Hey, well, I got that. Or content oriented, like, okay, more is better, blah, blah. And so I learned how to ask questions and
Mm.
cover pain points for people and then match them to the products that was going to alleviate or eradicate their pain. And I think that's been my success elixir ever since.
I love that. I love everything you said, by the way. There's so much that is like my head is spinning into, okay, where do we go from here? Because there's a lot. And of course, when I talk about your books and what you're doing now in this We Can Do It Women movement that you created that I'm very excited about. But I have a question just backtracking into your grandparents, because I think they planted a very important seed. And as a mom I still have a 10-year-old at home and a 14-year-old. So I'm always, this is wisdom for me to like trying to plant this seed, because they were farmers, you mentioned, and yet somehow they got into that interest into the stock market and to have that vision to take you so little to the stock exchange. So what do you think is about them that really made them different? Because not every farmer would go and think about the stock market and take the little kids to go there. So what do you think motivated them to plant that seed?
Right. Well, my dad was the farmer, and so my I might have misstated it. My paternal was the farming, and this was my maternal. I might have misstated that. My apologies. My maternal, my mom's dad, who was a mail carrier,
Uh-huh.
and he got involved in stocks. I'm not sure how. Perhaps he was hobnobbing with some of the mail carriers, but he had this black book, and I still have it to this day. It's beautiful, and it's every single dividend he wrote down. And so there was this intrigue, I think. He was a curious man,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he was smart. And so he began investing and it continued. And that was then his daughter, my mom's sister, that took us to the New York Stock Exchange. So
Okay, okay.
we understood about stocks in a way
Mhm.
that wasn't completely, detail oriented every facet, but we understood that you could make money while you sleep.
Yes.
Being raised on a farm where the labor is manual, you either
Yeah.
you plant, you fertilize, you hope for good weather, you hope for a good harvest, and then you sell it to the farmers. And and if you don't work, you're just not going to get paid. But this was making money as you sleep.
Mm. I like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like that. And I like the fact and the power in your story of planting those seeds young, because then it gives you a visual of, you said something that I find very, very powerful, which is you didn't say, I'm going to become a stock market broker, which is other guests that I've had, they had that visual and they say, I'm going to become that. No, you said, I'm going to be part of that energy, which I think is another elixir you're sharing with us. It's not about becoming a certain thing, it's recognizing the energy that gives us joy, that gives you those butterflies. And maybe it's not going to be as a stock market broker or whatever, but you say, this is the energy I'm attracted to.
That's right. Because ultimately, Leticia, money is a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I want us women in particular to be in relationship with our money. So I hold these up and I say, yeah, there are 10 of them and they're real. And absent us being in relationship with it, there's going to be a separation that's going to be pretty costly to us, if not deadly. And so I invite our women listeners to go to the bank and get out 2 $100 bills. And one of them you're going to carry in your wallet. And people think that sometimes I'm making this up, but I'm not. And here's my wallet. It's my cell phone and it has a little wallet in the back. And I didn't plant this. This is in here every single day of my life. And there it is, $100 bill. Okay. Now we're not spending it. So I say, go to the bank and get $200 bills and carry one around with you. Do not spend it. But the magic of carrying that, when other than that, and heretofore, Leticia, our set point, our money set point that we were kind of comfortable with was a 20. Or a 10.
Yes.
And now we're adding a 0 if it was a 10. And this gives us this kind of feeling of, I have it, I could spend it, I'm not.
Oh my God.
The other $100 bill, tape it on your bathroom mirror so that every time you go into that bathroom or your refrigerator, you see this is something that holds the power to achieve a dream. So that energy gets morphed into not the power of this piece of paper, but what it can buy, what it can alleviate, the stresses it can alleviate for us. Let's say we have a bad health diagnosis and we want to seek treatment that insurance doesn't cover. That's helpful to have some money because it buys you choices.
You know, you just gave me the chills because people that know me for a long time know that one of the stories I always tell is my dad, who's an immigrant and immigrated Italy, went to Venezuela with nothing. The one thing he always did to us as kids, if we came and went on a trip, he would give us, okay, here's $40 to spend. Here's 200 in case of emergency. And I expect those 200 back at the end of the day. And we always, as little kids, carried $40 to spend on everything we wanted, and then 200 that we were not allowed to spend, always with us. And that I share with other friends. And I think that's one of the smartest things my dad ever did for us. Because very little, we always had more money to buy the other thing we wanted, but we couldn't because he was supposed to, and he would mark them too, just to make sure that we didn't, like ask mom or something like that. And it's one of the things that I'm always being grateful as a strategy. And basically and I stopped doing it. So I'm going to go back to the bank and get the $200 bill because now it's everything credit cards and we are going without cash in the wallet. You just made me realize this.
Exactly.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, this is amazing. So at some point, Deborah, 40 years in financial planning, it's obvious you were enjoying what you were doing, I think, because that's the energy you wanted to be around. You created a life for that. And then at some point, your career pivoted or you started doing, more coaching. What happened? Or share with us how then this other facet of your life, TEDx talks, books, and the movement We Can Do It Woman came about.
Well, thank you, Leticia. Yes, I practiced 42 years, boots on the ground, and my master's is in retirement planning. So I attracted this older clientele, and I advised 34. I had 34 clients, and I had 34 agendas, and none of them were my own. And so it was very exciting because I was teasing out the goals of my clients. What would you like this money to do? And sometimes they had been through some traumas, and they were kind of deer in the headlights. They weren't sure the why around multiplying their money. And this was powerful because sometimes they had to go home and think about it. And then they'd have an idea. Well, I've always wanted to go to Hawaii, right? And so they'd write it down. And I would write it down. And then I'd say, now the pump has been primed. I want you to continue to think about things you would like to do, like your bucket list, right? And they would do that. And then one by one, we would tick them off and do it. And I said, the only requirement is you send me postcards from these places you're traveling. And I had families take their entire extended family, like 28 people to Disney. And then
Wow.
sent me back this picture, and everybody was in khaki pants and light powder blue shirts. And it was
Mm,
the most beautiful family picture I've ever seen
mm,
because you could see everybody's face, right? It was, they weren't
mhm,
wearing plaids or anything. So that was an interesting thing. And then another couple hot air ballooned around Europe, right? It was
oh, wow.
amazing what people did. So then I had their kids as clients, even while they were alive. And then I had their grandkids as clients, and it was amazing. And I loved it. And so in 2020, the opportunity came up for me to sell my practice to my trusted associate with whom she was in practice with me. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And I said to myself at that point, I've been serving 34 original clients and their kids and their grandkids. And yet I have a lot of life experience, both book knowledge. Yeah, I got my master's, fine, and practical, right? I was holding these people's hands, Leticia, through unexpected events. And that's what tests our mettle. It's
Mm,
those sudden deaths, that dementia onset, that losing a child, getting divorced, early death, those kinds of comeuppance that aren't on the calendar like 59 and a half, 70 and a half, et cetera, are those which bring us back to the alignment or misalignment of our money and our values, right?
mhm,
That's really been my penchant in life, is to ensure that as much as possible, we tease out what it is we're looking to achieve and then have our money match that. And of course, we can do that in our portfolio. We can use a gender lens and invest in women-owned and women CEO companies. We can talk about green investing, et cetera. So we can do that in a number of ways. Most especially that comes forth when women write down their budget. And a lot
mhm.
of women are like allergic to this, like, oh, there's a comeuppance kind of a thing. And ultimately, I say to them, this is not about me. When I assign this to my coaching clients, like, write a budget and just show me what you're spending your money on. I don't care. I don't have any care in the world about what you're spending money on. I want you to care. And time after time, people would come into my office, throw the cigarette box on the conference table and say, I quit smoking. I saw how much I was spending. You see, it's always self-revelatory. And so
Yeah.
we can self-correct if we know. But if the fear, Leticia, if the fear stops us from the facts, then we
Mhm,
have nothing on which to base any pivotal behaviors that we are adopting or have adopted just through the rote about our money and where it goes. So when we draft a budget, now we know where our money is going and we are directing it rather than wonder where my money is going.
mhm.
See how
Yes.
powerful it is? We're moving ourselves into the driver's seat of our own finances.
Yes. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. And so with that, you've empowered, and especially women, like let's say not older, because 60 is the new 30, but like later in life when they've dealt with a divorce or a death. So you wrote a book, how about how to grieve, and you became a coach, a grieving coach. Did you lose your husband and that's what prompted, or you just saw it happening to so many people that you wanted to become a grief coach?
Right. I did not lose my husband. I was in practice during the 9/11 tragedy. And
Mm,
I was a partner in a billion-dollar firm. And after we all went to the hospital and gave blood, which was useless, everyone was dead, we came back and we said to each other, the partners all looked at each other and said, what will we do? Because we were right across the river from New York.
mm, mm,
And all four white men looked in unison towards me and said, we're going to give pro bono service for 1 year to a certain number of survivors. And Deborah, you're the partner that's going to do it. And I thought, oh my gosh.
mm, mm,
And then at the same moment, Leticia, that I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm thinking, yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm up for the test. I was never afraid of death. I came from a very large family. People died, and it was a part of life, and I wasn't afraid of it. And so I was a counsel pro bono for 1 year to 7 widows, 1 widower, and a 12-year-old orphan after the tragedy. And I thought I was pretty empathic, and I am. And yet, what that experience, which was so seismic, taught me was I still had a lot to learn about grieving. And so I began a 2-year program and I got my grief coach certification.
mm,
And then I wrote the book. First, the book I wrote was New Widow Financial Lifeline. Then after I got the grief coach certification, I doubled the size of the book, and now it's called My Husband Died, Now What? A Widow's Guide to Grief, Recovery, and Smart Financial Decisions. And half the book is grief recovery tips, and half the book is financial pitfalls to avoid. It's a book like no other because of that dual purpose, if you will. And people have been helped by it tremendously. We're just bringing out the second edition here in another maybe a week or two,
Oh, wow.
with a complimentary journal guide. And it's a powerful book in so much as, well, first of all, in America, and unlike different countries, we don't deal with death well. We're poor at it, actually. And so this is the book for women to, and some men, of course, have read, to implement and to grow into. Almost they're having to teach their friends how to help them grieve. It's really quite ironic in some regards. Yet I want us to be able to find our next chapter after the death of a person. And so couple that with my master's in retirement planning, I was attracting an older clientele. And you'll hear in my TEDx talk, I talk about the horrible socialization, Leticia, that mature women have had around their money. Like back in the day, any woman 60 and north of that, I call 60 and wiser, has had this horrible socialization. Don't wear your little head over that, Betty. Bob will handle it, right? Well, I say, well, okay, maybe if Bob doesn't predecease you or come home one day and trade you in for 230s, right? So I'm basically like popping an older woman's head open, pulling that crap out and putting the new and the improved and the empowering financial confidence information and knowledge into their head so that they can use the hardwired common sense in finances. Because heretofore they've kind of siloed it over here because like, well, women don't do that. That's not good for good women. We all know how she got to that. All that nonsense. And here was the big horrific thing. Women were taught about the R word, a 4-letter R word with regard to the stock market. Risk, 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 risks. So why would a woman who hasn't been taught venture into a risky environment when really her task in life is to kind of care for and keep the family together and be the nurturer? She's not going to just say, today, I'm going to take a healthy dose of risk, right? She's not going to say that. What the pundits on the television when the markets are crashing and their veins are popping, the market is crashing, they don't talk about the return of the stock market. And risk is the currency for return in the stock market, such that women have saved very diligently, and I commend them. They didn't spend like Banshees like we spend now. They didn't have that advertising pressure, but they saved in bonds, Leticia. And from an 80+ year performance difference, bonds have performed 1/2 that of stocks. So why are older women sinking instead of swimming in retirement? Because they weren't taught the precise recipe. I can use another analogy about investing. And for the 7+ year goals, we need to be in stocks or real estate or something with a capital appreciation nature to overperform so that we can pay our taxes and we can keep pace with inflation. And that's one of the biggest missteps that women have made, and not at their own fault. They have been diligent savers for the most part. And so when I realized that, and I inherited widows that are older, divorcees that were older, I said to myself, what is the most vulnerable time? Older age, they have money typically, or maybe, God forbid, they don't. And they need to make decisions about an area they're not comfortable with, they've not been taught, and they're fearful of. I can come into the situation, make everyday analogies, talk about you wouldn't open your spice cabinet and dump all of the spices into a beef roast any more than you would open that same spice cabinet and dump all of the spices into a dessert. It just doesn't work that way. You want a bond for this, you want a stock for that, you want cash for this. And so the second you say that, women say, oh, of course. But who's saying that to them? Not the white male brokers. I can tell you that.
No, I think it's brilliant, your approach, and honestly inspirational to see how you yourself have opened up that spice cabinet into your life and created the perfect mix to something that not only makes you have impact in others people's life, makes you live the life you want, and just you bring joy and pay it forward also to others, as you say, in very critical times. Because I can absolutely see my mom. If my dad was not to be there, and the children not to, for whatever, she would be like, she wouldn't know where to start, to be honest. Like her, there's so many others. So I think it's incredible work. And with that, you created this movement, this community called We Can Do It Women.
Yes, I own the trademark We Can Do It Women. I've owned it for several years, and I thought to myself, Deborah, do something with this. And so I've started this Facebook group, and we have a little over 500 members and so forth. And it's entitled We Can Do It Women 60 Plus Community, but we're accepting people that aren't quite 60. And that was pretty funny at the beginning. Women, Leticia, were pining to be a little older to get into the group. It was so fun. Like, I'm 59 and a half. I'm almost 60. It was very, very. But anyway, we have a group of women, and there's everything from, people that are, retired, and people are still in business, and people that are retired and in business, and so forth. And it's this mix of women with whom we can congeal and be in collaboration with each other and kind of support each other. We're offering the opportunity to advertise your business in it and so forth on Fridays, and you can tell everybody what you're up to. And this is I put in information about finances. I think our voice is very important now, especially as women. And it's important for us to be heard by our legislators, and to drive legislation that's not going to continue to discriminate against women and girls and non-white people in general. So I bring in aspects that I think are hopeful around the uncertainty in the markets and so forth. And this is a place for us to feel safe. It's a safe container so that women can come out of the sidelines, because society has a tendency to push older women to the side. Okay, you did the kid thing, or you did the career thing. It's kind of, you're not as attractive, so you're not going to get movie roles. Just shuffle on over here to the side. And we're saying, no, shuffle right back out here into the spotlight and talk to us about the fact that you've always wanted to paint. You've always wanted to be a coach. You've always wanted to travel. You've always wanted to X, Y. And then women are saying, you can do this. Yes, you can. And so I interview people every Thursday. And this is an array of women who are so accomplished, some of them well into their 70s and 80s, and are fitness coaches, and they're running marathons, and they're leading fashion. And some of them didn't start until they were 55 or 60. So it's never too late. No, it is not. And we can do it, women. We're stronger together. So it's coming out of the shadows into the spotlight and imagining your next chapter and then going for it.
I absolutely love it, because I do think that the empower women energy is extremely, extremely contagious, powerful, and inspirational. And when people touch it, because they're not used to it. Like when they see this empower women energy, and which comes with, without the pretense sometimes, and as a woman in a male-dominated world, industry in telecom, I see it all the time, and sometimes they go like they don't know how to react. And so I really think it's amazing that you are, because also then even if it's older women, they have daughters, nieces, other people in younger generations, and then they serve as as a role model and say, well, if my grandma was running marathons at 80, what can I not do, at 20 something? And so I think that the ripple effects that this creates, it's incredible. So, how inspiring, Deborah, everything you've shared is beyond inspiring. So I congratulate you. It's really amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Leticia, I love the concept that the Japanese have, and they call it ikigai. And it's do what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs. Yes. And then if it's a situation, what the world can pay you for. Now, some people are doing volunteer work, and so that last fourth component isn't as important. But this is about us being in congruence, Leticia, especially as we age, because we're wise beyond our years. Yes, we are. And it is a shame for society to shuffle that off to the side, because boy, the wisdom that is evident in our older generation is just profound. And the coalescing of that wisdom with what it is that we're passionate about. And so we want to have a conversation with the little girl inside that's still saying, hey, you did a nice painting before. Why don't you try your hand at that? You wrote something down. Your life is pretty interesting. Why don't you start a journal, and maybe it turns into your autobiography? Maybe your grandkids or your nieces will read it, and they'll be educated about who it was that you were if you don't have time to talk with them about it. And so I'm all about bringing things into relationship with each other. I want us to be in relationship with their money. I want us to understand financial planning as taxes are related to investment, are related to budgeting and cash flow, are related to risk management, are related to asset dissemination in terms of where your stuff is going to go, estate planning. All of it is related. And the second we start to dismember is the second I think we lose power, Leticia. I want us to be as empowered as we can, because our bodies may tend to fail us unless we die instantly. Our bodies probably will degenerate. And I want us to be in relationship with ourselves at whatever age of mobility, mental cognition, or slippage of that. I want us to be in relationship with that, and hopefully in conversation with our family, friends, and those around us, so that it's no longer taboo to be real, to be raw, to be vulnerable, and to be able to accept help, to ask for help and to accept help. Boy, is that a big, big pill to swallow for many of us.
Yes, absolutely. So well said. So powerful thought. So Deborah, I always give the opportunity. I know we've spoken a lot about a lot of things. Is there anything in particular, an initiative, anything we haven't touched upon that you would like to share with the audience? Of course, your webpage will be on the show notes. Anything else we missed that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think for people that have been stifled, and for the most part, a lot of women's voices have been stifled. Sometimes when I've asked people, what do you want? They're not exactly sure. So then I say, take the reverse. Yeah, you can do this with raising kids or whatever. You can do this is a very, very good life skill. Well, so what don't you want? What you probably don't want to live a life in your later years with a standard of living less than what you have now. No, 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 no. Oh, okay, great. Then that's the bedrock. We start there and now we build. And so I think it's sometimes helpful for us to say, we're not going to tolerate this, this, and this. Whatever it is, I'm not going to tolerate, disorganization in my finances. I'm not going to tolerate being shameful over any debt that I'm carrying. I'm not going to tolerate having making low confidence decisions. I'm not going to tolerate not knowing every single answer every step of the way, because we're not perfectionists in any area of life. And so I think that once we allow ourselves some grace, we set a boundary. This is what I'm not going to deal with. I'm not going to deal with being disparaged as I age. No, I'm not. I'm not going to deal with my family not listening to what I have to say. No, I'm not. And if they continue to, I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to email or send it postal mail to each one of them, because my voice still matters. You see, I want us to die only the second that our pulse stops, not when we reach a certain age and other people that are younger seem to maybe take the floor and, push us to the side. And so I want us to have purpose in our life, right? Because purpose gives us the meaning of our essence, our contributions, and then we can expand from there as much as our curiosity can take us. What's your purpose, Leticia? Oh my gosh. You have these interests, and that's quite, amazing. And these two interests that you talked about, boy, I can cotton with that. Why don't we talk with each other about this, right? And once we talk about the multiplicity of interests and passions that we have, we can find ourselves in very interesting bedfellow groups, right? And that's a sexist term, but I want us to be in community with each other, especially women in women, because there's wisdom. And we want to be talking, and we want to be heard.
Love it. I love everything you have said. And, it also sounds sexy, but the boys have had their club for way too long. Yes. And it's time that the girls or the women have also a club. And I've heard that before, like, well, that person, because she's a woman, she promoted another woman. And my thought is like, how long has that happened in the men's time? Like, I don't agree. It's only, I'm sure they have the talent and all that, but the things that, there are noticed when, the minority does it. It's interesting, right? And the only way to do this is just equalizing, like where you don't even think about genders anymore, where people are so empowered and you just see talent and you just see capacity and you forget about where they're from and you forget what gender they are. And to me, that's the ultimate goal. And initiatives like yours are the ones that help us achieve it. So I'm grateful for you and for all you do. The last question, Deborah, is what makes you tick in those times where you are not that positive or energetic or aligned with your energy? Is there a thing or a place or a practice or something you do to help you resource your soul?
That's a really good point, Leticia, because so often we think, oh, I'm not down, I'm never, depressed or in a funk. No, I am. Certainly. I think if we're involved, we can get angry about things that are unjust. And so the systems need to be changed. And so when I'm feeling depleted, you always know you've given out more, you've given out more than what's in the saucer of your cup. Like I want us to give from the saucer of our cup, not from the cup. So, but sometimes situation, timeliness, and we give from the saucer and the cup. And then we say, like even your car has an idiot, like get gas, right? And so water does it for me. I have a home 15 or 30 minutes north of here on a lake. And I go there and I sit, not with my cell phone, with myself. And I stare at the water and I close my eyes and I sense the water, I smell the water, I feel the water, and water helps me so much. And then I will listen to Louise Hay's meditations. Yes, I will. Her affirmations. I want to hear the positive, the positive, the positive. In my car, I have a CD that's a constant loop on a CD of affirmations. You can do it. You can. You're a leader. You're strong. You have solutions. You solve problems. You're not going to be stopped. Because we need to fill ourselves up with that kind of self-confidence because we are smart and we are innovative and we do solve problems. And yet there's nothing to say that we ought to be giving from the cup. And when we find ourselves there, I want us to fill our cup up so that we're now poised to give from the excess. And so a car without gas doesn't run. And I don't want us to run with a low tank of gas or no gas, because that's going to wreck everything else around us. And these are times that call for us to be present and to be as healthy as possible. And I want to do everything in my power to get the sleep. Sleep is not a luxury. That's the other thing. When I'm not feeling well, boy, I somehow carve in and I take a power nap in the afternoon if I need to. Yes, I do. Because sleep is so regenerative. So hopefully that gives our viewers some tips, and they'll share their own and we'll all grow because of it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Deborah. That's what I call going to your back to basics place. And that's why you were an ideal guest for this podcast. Thank you for coming. And to all of you out there, thank you so much. And until the next episode of Back to Basics. You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.